Hello guys, and welcome to my review of the Shure SE535 in-ear monitors. I haven't done an in-ear monitor review in a rather long time, and essentially I think I've pretty much settled with what headphone that I really want to be accustomed with in terms of the sound preferences and how I want to use them for their given scenario. So I figured, let me jump back on the in-ear monitor bandwagon and see what they have to offer. And after extensive research, I've pretty much ended up with the first choice that I ever had with an in-ear monitor, which was the Shure SE530. And the reason why I'm saying the first choice is essentially the SE535 is Shure's revision of the popular and strong standing SE530. Now the difference is Shure claims is a more extended treble response as well as a more defined articulation in that region as a result of a different filtration system and I believe a different acoustic network in front of the speakers in the tweeter region. I can't really comment on that because I haven't heard the SE530 in essentially about 4 or 5 years, so my memory is long gone, but I love the SE530 sound, and when I did have them, I would say the treble was the weakest point of those IEMs, but still they were very articulated sounding in that region, but it was just not enough emphasis at times. With the SE535, I believe that this sound signature, this frequency response is essentially perfect. Like, I've never said this before in anything. My recent review of the HD700, the sound signature is absolutely brilliant as well as its technicality. But however, I believe that the SE535 sound signature is just perfect. It's literally spot on the sound signature that I've always wanted. Now, the SE535, as you can see, is a rather small package. It's essentially an in-ear monitor. These things are very small. However, it houses 3 speakers in each ear, and essentially the setup is a dual woofer and a tweeter. The dual woofers are responsible for the mid-range and the bass frequencies, while the tweeter is just solely responsible for the treble. Now, the SE530 is a well-made headphone. The plastic that it's essentially constructed of is a very thick and durable feeling plastic, especially given its size. It has detachable cables finally, because the SE530s didn't, and that essentially did have some problems with its cable essentially becoming too stiff and then it will break. But however, Shure has alleviated this issue by building a more robust cable as well as making it detachable. In case it does fail, you can always remove the cable and just pop on a new one. The comfort of this IEM is outstanding. This foam tip is absolutely brilliant. You essentially just squeeze it and then you stick it into your ear canals, and within about 2 to 3 minutes this will fully expand back to its original shape inside of your ear. However, your ear is not going to allow for it to fully expand, so it's going to fit in all the crevices of your ear, essentially performing a perfect seal. And due to the soft nature of this tip, it's very, very comfortable, and it does block out serious amount of noise. Like, I'm talking about you can have an ambulance drive past you with its sirens on while you're listening to music and you won't hear a thing. So this is kind of dangerous in a sense when you're outside in the urban environment. You really need to be aware of your surroundings because these block out some serious amount of noise. And essentially that's just that in terms of its comfort and durability. These are just exceptional. Now moving over to the sound quality, where I can just really dive in and just explain why I think these earphones, or not even earphones, let me not even disrespect them by calling these earphones, these in-ear monitors, there we go, are just absolutely spectacular. And it's essentially because of its sound signature. This is by far, like I said previously, the most correct sounding headphone. I would just put it in the whole category of earphones, in-ear monitors, headphones. It's just, in terms of sound signature, out of everything I've heard, I believe this is the most correct sounding pair of anything that I've heard. The bass is essentially ruler flats from the sub bass to the mid bass to the upper bass, and leading into the lower mid range all the way into the upper mid range, it's an incredibly linear response. There are no peaks or any like instant dips or anything. This is a very smooth yet articulated sound in your monitor. As you can see from the frequency response, like, this is just nearly ruler flat in terms of its sub bass extension all the way into the lower mid-range. The integration of the bass in the mid-range is absolutely spectacular. Now moving over to the mid-range. Now these are literally the best sounding mid-range that I've ever heard in my entire life. I think these are actually better than my Westone ES5, but I really can't comment that fully because I haven't heard the ES5s in a while, but maybe they're just about on par. Those and the ES5s and the HD700, they all offer their own, distinct sonic flavor in terms of how the mid-range performs. Even the Sennheiser Momentums, let me not even forget about those. They all offer a very beautiful sound in mid-range. However, I believe that these and the Westone ES5, due to their balanced armature design, they offer a very clean sense of immediate retrieval of the mid-range. And it just sounds so realistic in a sense that there's no grain to the sound. The HD700 is the most realistic sound in mid-range because of its depth and its sound staging. It really sounds like there's someone in front of you. However, there is that slight bit of sense of grain to the vocals that kind of detracts from the overall listening experience, but it's really not that big of an issue. However, the tonality, the ultimate tonality, has to go to the SE535 or my ES5s. They just nail it when it comes to the mid-range presentation. I still can't get over that. The mid-range on these are just superb. And moving on to the treble, it does continue that tradition with the SE530, where the treble is subdued and relaxed and behind the mid-range and the bass. However, it's still very crystal clear, open, articulated. But this really allows the mid-range to pop, gives the mid-range that sense of weight and that sense of warmth. And the treble has its own character in the sense that it really comes out when necessary. So you can really enjoy a vast array of genres with these things, and it won't be overbearing because the treble is a very relaxed sounding treble. And I actually really agree with the tuning that Shure did with this treble. It allows these in-ear monitors to be very versatile and handle a wide array of genres. Now moving on to the soundstage, and it's an in-ear monitor, so of course it's very in-your-head sounding. However, due to the articulation and the speed of the speakers that balanced armatures typically have, this has its superb instrument separation. So despite the soundstage being mostly in your head, the instruments have very precise pinpoints where nothing really sounds cluttered or muddled or congested or confused. This can dissect your music like it's an instrument from a medical office or like some kind of surgery room. This is very quick sounding, yet due to its limitation and its size, of course the soundstage is not going to be as big as, say, a full-sized open headphone. But like I said before, due to the speed of these speakers, the instrument separation, which is also very important, is absolutely spectacular on these. So soundstage, and I like it. I like this intimate sound because it's not cluttered because of a slow speaker. So in terms of comparing it to my HD700s, of course this is no comparison in terms of its size and its depth. However, this does sound like a miniature scale HD700 in the sense that everything sounds smaller. However, the instrument separation is pretty much alike. They both separate everything pristinely. Everything comes across as being easily to focus upon. Nothing sounds like they're on top of each other. All the notes have their own space and their own articulation. Now, these are just absolutely superb. I would highly recommend them, and these are still quite expensive. Like, even coming out since 2007, these are essentially the same price as they were a good 7 years ago. Like, this is a good showcasing that these have stood their time and they're going nowhere. These things are absolutely superb. The tuning on these are absolutely impeccable. By far the best sound signature that I've heard from anything. Not the best technicality, but the best sound signature. And I highly recommend these to anyone who wants a very high quality on-the-go experience, or even in the house, and just don't want the size of a headphone. And yeah, I highly recommend these. These are just amazing companions to my HD700. And yeah, this has been my review of the Shure SE535. If I haven't covered anything in this review, feel free to ask below in the comments, and I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. Thanks for watching, guys, and later.